still remember the first time my boss stole from me. Not money, not anything physical you could touch or lock in a safe. No, it was something worse. He stole my work, my reputation, my future. And the way he did it, so casual, so smooth, I swear it still burns in my chest when I think about it. It was a Monday morning in our New York office. Everyone was called into the main conference room. You know, the one with the massive glass walls that makes you feel like you're on display. The kind of room where reputations are made and destroyed. Gregory, my boss, walked in late as always, carrying himself like he owned the building. His tie perfectly knotted, shoes polished enough to see your reflection in. He had that smirk, the one that said, "I'm untouchable." I had no idea that in the next 10 minutes, he was about to erase months of my life's work with just a few sentences. He plugged his laptop into the projector, cleared his throat, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I've been working on a solution that could save this company millions." And there it was, my project, the one I had pored over for 3 straight months. Nights, weekends, skipped dinners, missed birthdays, everything. Every graph, every formula, every word of that deck was mine. But Gregory presented it as if it had sprung fully formed from his genius brain. He clicked through slide after slide, casually explaining my ideas like they were his own. He even cracked jokes along the way, making the room laugh, as though he had thought of the clever touches too. I sat there frozen. My palms were sweating, my throat dry, but my mind screaming, "That's mine. That's mine. That's mine." Some of my colleagues glanced at me, quickly looking away when our eyes met. They knew. A few of them had even helped me gather data for the project, but nobody said a word. Gregory was their boss too. To them, standing up to him meant career suicide. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. Applause for him. And the worst part? He looked right at me, locked eyes, and gave me the smallest smirk, as if to say, "What are you gonna do about it?" That smirk burned into me. I wanted to shout, to stand up and call him out, to expose him right there in front of everyone, but I didn't. Because in that moment, I realized something important. Gregory wasn't just stealing credit, he was testing me. And I wasn't ready. Not yet. That day, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just anger, it was a vow. A quiet, burning vow that he would not get away with this forever, that I would find a way to make him pay. But in that conference room, all I could do was sit there, fists clenched under the table, while my boss stole the first piece of my future. And that was only the beginning. After that first theft, I kept telling myself maybe it was a one-time thing. Maybe Gregory panicked. Maybe he wanted to impress the higher-ups just once. Maybe he'd give me credit later. But it wasn't a one-time thing. It was just the beginning of a long, calculated campaign to bury me. From that Monday morning onward, Gregory treated me differently. He wasn't just my boss anymore, he was my puppeteer. Every morning, I'd walk into the office and find a new pile of tasks waiting on my desk. Reports, data models, slide decks, the kind of grunt work that takes hours, but in the right hands looks like gold. I'd grind through them, pouring in detail and effort, thinking maybe this time he'll mention me. This time he'll give me credit. But every single time, Gregory swooped in just before deadlines, slapped his name on my work, and sent it upstairs. He stayed late enough to send emails at 10 p.m. CCing executives, writing lines like, "Here's the solution I've been developing. I'd read those emails and feel the blood rush to my face. He didn't just erase my name, he made me invisible, and the office started to believe it. Soon, people were congratulating him in hallways, patting him on the back during lunch, whispering about his brilliance. Meanwhile, when I walked past, I got polite nods at best. Sometimes pitying looks, sometimes nothing at all. The humiliation wasn't private anymore, it was social. Gregory was building his empire on my bones, and everyone around me was too scared or too selfish to stop him. It got worse during meetings. I'd try to speak up, to share ideas, to at least reclaim a little bit of the spotlight. Gregory wouldn't just shut me down, he'd do it with style. He'd cut me off mid-sentence, say things like, "Adrian, let's not get lost in the weeds. Let the grown-ups handle this." Everyone would laugh nervously. Some would glance at me with that ouch expression, but no one dared to defend me. Not once. And Gregory loved it. I could see it in the way he leaned back in his chair, smirking, watching me shrink. He was feeding off my humiliation. Then came the cruelest cut of all. One Friday afternoon, as I was packing up to finally escape the nightmare of the week, Gregory strolled over to my desk. He leaned down, his cologne suffocating, and whispered just loud enough for two coworkers nearby to hear, "You're not leadership material, Adrian. Stick to your spreadsheets." Leave the real innovation to me. He straightened his tie, grinned, and walked away. My coworkers looked at me, half sympathetic, half terrified. I laughed it off, pretending it didn't gut me, but inside, something shattered. It wasn't just about stolen work anymore. It was about me. Gregory wasn't content with taking credit. He wanted to destroy my reputation, to make sure nobody would ever see me as capable, as valuable, as leadership material. And then came the final insult, the one that broke me and set my revenge in motion. 3 weeks later, Gregory's name appeared on the company newsletter. He'd been nominated for an innovation award, an award based entirely on the project I had built from the ground up, the project I had sacrificed everything for. I stared at the announcement on my screen, the words blurring as my eyes burned with rage. Gregory's face smiled back at me from the email banner, smug, polished, celebrated. That night, I went home and sat in the dark for hours, replaying every humiliation, every theft, every smirk. And then something changed. The anger that had been eating me alive shifted. It crystallized into something sharper, colder, more dangerous. I realized I couldn't just survive Gregory anymore. I couldn't just hope people would see the truth. No, I had to make them see. From that night forward, it wasn't just about my career. It wasn't just about recognition. It was about revenge, about pulling Gregory down from his throne and showing everyone exactly who he was, and I knew exactly how I'd start. After that night, the night the award nomination showed up in my inbox, the plan stopped being a fantasy and became a job. Not a job at the company, but a job of a different kind. One that required patience, method, and an almost clinical attention to detail. It was strange, realizing that the same set of skills I'd used to design predictive models could be repurposed for revenge. Data is evidence. Evidence is truth, and truth, if you present it correctly, is unstoppable. The first rule I set for myself was simple. Don't get emotional in front of other people. Emotions are messy. They leak. They make mistakes visible. So I went cold, focused, surgical. I started with what I already had. The project files, the server logs, the timestamps. All of it was on the shared drive. And yes, metadata is boring to most people, but it's merciless to liars. You can't fake creation dates. You can't alter the record without leaving a trail. I downloaded everything, every version, every revision. I named folders clearly, obsessively. Project, main, final, Adrian, V12, model, code, Adrian, 9, Jan. I created a map of the work, which parts I built, when I built them, and who helped with what. But structure alone wouldn't topple a man like Gregory. He was practiced at polishing things for public consumption. So next, I needed voice. I needed a record that tied his narrative to my reality, a trail that showed he knew the work was mine, that he had instructed me to format it as his, that he had knowingly presented it as his own. That's when I started recording. At first it felt petty, almost paranoid. You don't want to be the person in the office who records everything. But I had been robbed. I knew what it felt like to lose credit, to watch someone take the fruits of your labor. So I began taking my phone into the meetings. I muted notifications, placed it under the table, and hit record. I recorded Gregory's casual directives, make sure the slides read like I built them, rework the narrative so it sounds executive level. Don't mention you did the heavy lifting. I'll present it as a team effort. In some moments, he didn't even hide his contempt. In others, he was a velvet-voiced manipulator, so smooth that the words sounded like mentorship. Not every recording was usable. Some were low volume, some were background chatter, but several of them were gold. There was one call, a late-night Zoom, where he said, with brutal clarity, "Adrian, I need this to look like my work. Don't leave your name on the files anymore. That file became a spine in my case. Next came the email trail. I started saving every interaction where he acknowledged my work, not public praise, but the private messages where he instructed me to refine content and then turned around and used the polished output. I took screenshots, downloaded attachments, and copied headers showing the file paths, those small, easily overlooked strings that, when combined, tell an undeniable story. I'll be honest, it required a little social engineering. Not the criminal kind, but the human kind. You learn to ask for things in ways that seem innocuous. Greg, can you double check the deck and share your edits? I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. He'd send it back with revisions and comments that proved he'd reviewed and implicitly adopted my work. I saved the comment histories. I cataloged versions. I cross-referenced names and times. But I knew metadata and recordings alone might not be enough. In the corporate world, truth is slippery. People rationalize. They say, he brought the content to life, or call it teamwork. So I needed witnesses, people who would say, under oath, or at least under official review, what they saw. That part was trickier. People fear retribution. They fear losing their jobs. I get it. I am not reckless. So I started small. Coffee chats, casual lunches, one-on-one moments where I didn't mention revenge or slander. I just listened. I found the ones who were quietly disgusted. The quiet ones who had been on the receiving end of Gregory's guidance. People who had filed away minor indignities and were waiting for someone brave enough to speak up. Mia was one of those people. She was sharp, understated, and had a way of observing things that made you think she noticed more than she let on. I approached her after a late meeting, said something like, "Hey, can I ask you something about the project?" and let the conversation drift. She told me she'd noticed Gregory presenting others' work as his. She described an instance where he'd taken her team's analysis and rebranded it. I didn't push, I just listened, and when she paused, I said, "If you ever saw something you felt was wrong, would you tell the truth if asked?" She stared at me for a long beat and then nodded. Yes, that little nod became the first human witness in my file. I kept building. I found another person, a junior designer who had been asked to strip the credits from a deck. He'd quietly saved an original PDF with the author metadata intact. He handed it to me under the table during a coffee break. I thanked him with a small gift, not bribes, just a gesture to show I respected the risk he'd taken. There were nights I lay awake thinking about the moral line I was walking. I wasn't fabricating anything. I wasn't lying. I was collecting the truth and presenting it. But the wrongdoer was still a man who could inflict damage. I knew I had to be smarter than he was. If he smelled retaliation in the air, he would pivot, he would gaslight, and he would try to strip the evidence away. So I compartmentalized. I created duplicates of everything. I put copies on external drives, in cloud accounts, on encrypted folders that only I could access. One set I kept in an anonymous email draft, another on a private USB that I hid at a friend's apartment, a third in a password-protected folder in the cloud. I thought like a data analyst, not only in building the model, but in securing the model's outputs. Redundancy would be my insurance. And all the while, I kept my face calm at work. I smiled, I answered emails, I produced quality work. Because the most dangerous thing a person who's plotting revenge can do is to tip their hand too early. Gregory still believed I was docile, that I was simply an obedient number cruncher. He had no idea I had collector's meticulousness and a dossier that could level his empire. There were small risks. Once, I almost let my guard down. I sat down at my desk one afternoon to transfer a folder to my personal account and realized a manager, not Gregory, another manager, had walked up behind me and asked if I was okay. For a second, the screen went dim in my peripheral vision, and I thought he might notice the folder names. My heart jumped. I fumbled, said I was fine, and the manager left. Adrenaline coursed through me for an hour after that. Those close calls are the things that teach you discipline. By the end of the month, my dossier was thick. It wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was documents, voice files, emails, screenshots, and corroborating witness statements. I had a timeline. When the idea was born, how I iterated it, when Gregory first showed public interest, when he began appropriating segments, and finally, The newsletter with the file path that sealed the proof. Every piece fit into the other like gears in a clock. I could see the mechanism of his deception in crisp detail. And I realized another truth. This wasn't just my fight. It belonged to every person in that office who had ever been silenced or erased. If I won, it wasn't only my reputation restored. It was a little correction in the ledger of corporate injustice. One night, as I looked at the assembled evidence on my screen, I heard a knock on the conference room glass. It was Gregory, strolling past in his trademark arrogance. He stopped, fixed his gaze, and for the first time in weeks, his smile faltered. He looked at me and said, "You've been busy lately." There was a note in his voice that didn't belong there. Curiosity, maybe suspicion. He paused a beat longer and then walked away. My body reacted before my brain did. My hands went cold. Had he noticed the extra hours? Had someone else mentioned me? Or was it just a passing observation? I didn't have time to worry. The dossier was built, but I needed to be sure, absolute certainty before I ever moved. Because the moment I hit send on the right email, everything would change. And some people would lose more than their titles. So I saved my work, closed my laptop, and for the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe. For now, the arsenal was ready. But the battle had not yet begun, and as I walked home that night, the city lights in Manhattan blurred into streaks. I felt the weight of what I was about to do, but beneath it, a fierce, steady calm. The kind that means a man has a plan and he will see it through. For weeks, I lived in two worlds. At the office, I played the obedient analyst, head down, producing clean work and pretending the thefts didn't bruise me. Outside work, I was a different man, quiet, deliberate. My nights spent cross-referencing dates and building the narrative that would topple a man who thought he'd gotten away with everything. Then, one Friday afternoon, fate did what I could not. It made Gregory careless. It started like any other Friday, people buzzing about weekend plans, a few last-minute edits, the coffee machine on its last legs. Gregory had a habit of sending broad, self-congratulatory emails when the week ended. He liked to remind people, subtly, who was responsible for the wins. Usually it was harmless posturing. Mostly, I ignored it. Except that day, he attached images from his latest presentation, screenshots, slide previews, the sort of thing executives send when they want to look busy and brilliant. I almost deleted the email without opening it. I was tired, but some small part of me told me to look curiosity, habit, or maybe the vigilance I'd trained myself into. I opened the attachment, and there it was. On one slide, clear as daylight, the file path showed in the top header. That tiny breadcrumb trail you normally ignore. Users divided by Adrian, divided by projects, divided by model code. Final V9XLSX. For a second, the world narrowed. I stared until the letters blurred. Then my hands began to move. They always do when something outrages me. Whether it's typing, saving, or copying, motion calms the rising panic. I saved the screenshot, then the email, then the attachments. I copied the file path into a new folder labeled simply Newsletter Greg Screenshot. My heart was a drum. This was sloppy in the way only people who are too sure of themselves get sloppy. He'd been careful in public. He'd been practiced at erasing authorship. But a momentary lapse, a slide preview, had given me the direct link between the face on the newsletter and the files that bore my name. It felt like being given the missing piece of a puzzle you've stared at for months. But the danger here is obvious. An email screenshot alone is powerful, but it's also volatile. If Gregory realized it had been captured, he'd pivot, delete drafts, alter files, spin a new story. So I began thinking 6 moves ahead. I didn't just save the screenshot, I backed it up, encrypted it, and moved copies into 3 different locations. Redundancy was part of the plan. Then came the practical problem, how to present this to the company without looking like a whiny employee or a vengeful temp. The corporate world loves neat narratives, heroes, winners, tidy success stories. Gregory had crafted one. I had to tear it open and show the guts. But first, I needed to be sure this one screenshot wasn't a fluke. Had he simply forgotten to rename the path? Was it a trick, a setup? I had to validate the path. So I dug deeper. I opened previous versions of the project on the server and compared metadata. Every version showed the same creator stamp, Adrian Velasquez, and the same directory path structure. I cross-checked timestamps against the times I'd been in the files. The data matched, the hours I'd logged, the edits I'd made, everything was consistent. The screenshot was no accident. It was a breadcrumb that led directly from Gregory's presentation back to my work. The thrill was intoxicating. The thumbnail of that newsletter with my name faintly visible in the header, this was the moment evidence becomes undeniable. It wasn't just me saying he stole from me. The company's own internal structure, the file system, was saying it too. But I knew the next steps had to be surgical. You don't present a smoking gun and then wait for someone to clap. You prepare the stage. You build corroboration. So I reached out to Mia and the junior designer, the two people who'd already shown willingness to quietly support the truth. I didn't send them the screenshot. I didn't want the risk of leaks. Instead, I asked for small confirmations. Could Mia recount dates when Gregory took credit publicly? Could the designer show me the original PDF that still had embedded author data? They both came through. Mia gave me 2 dates where Gregory had publicly referenced initiatives that had clear fingerprints of my work. The designer handed me the original file, and when I opened its properties on my home machine, there in the metadata was my username, again, immutable, unmistakable. Every piece fit. The screenshot was the hinge. The metadata and witness accounts were the supporting beams. There was a part of me that tasted victory. I imagined the email threads, the stunned faces, the CEO's expression when confronted with the truth. I imagined equity restored and credit finally assigned where it belonged. I let myself imagine it for a few quiet minutes, then I smelled the danger. Because even with everything, there's a human variable, pride, and pride makes people dangerous. Gregory didn't act like a man who would quietly accept correction. He would fight, smear, and gaslight. He'd go for credibility rather than facts. He'd make it about personality, not proof. And in corporate life, sometimes personality wins. So I changed tack. I decided not to go public immediately, not with the screenshot alone. Instead, I would let the screenshot sit as a time bomb, a piece of evidence that when placed with others would blow the whole house down. I also did something else I hadn't done before. I tested Gregory. I watched him closely for a few days, more closely than usual. If he was truly careless, he might reveal another weakness. He might reveal arrogance in a way I could exploit. My opportunity came sooner than I expected. On Monday, an internal comms person asked Gregory for a quote for the company blog. He obliged, waxing poetic about leadership and innovation. He even forwarded back his own draft to comms with the subject line, "Use this for the blog shout out to my team." But in that forwarded draft, still in Gregory's inbox, the earlier slide images were attached. The slide images still showed the header. My file path, I didn't touch anything. I didn't forward it. I just archived it. I watched the chain. Then, casually, I sent a friendly message to the comms person asking about timelines for the blog. She responded with an offhand, "We're planning to post Friday." Bingo. Friday, the day people click through company news on board commutes. Now I had it, a public posting schedule and hard evidence that Gregory himself still had file headers active in his drafts. The stage was setting itself. But before I acted, there was one last selfish moment I let myself indulge. I walked past Gregory's office that evening, and he waved, smiling like a man who'd never known defeat. For a second, anger flared again, hot and animal. Then I breathed, and the feeling shifted to something colder, satisfaction. Not yet victory, just the knowledge that his arrogance had given me the key. As I left the building that night, I saved the screenshot in 3 additional secure places. I logged the dates, the people who might corroborate, and the times I'd seen him take credit. I had the proof, yes, but I also had a plan, create an unassailable narrative so that when I pulled the trigger, the company couldn't shrug or rationalize it away. I slept poorly that night, dreaming of slides and file paths, but my dreams were no longer consumed by helplessness. They were tactical. I woke up in the morning knowing that the newsletter mistake was the turning point. It had been careless on Gregory's part, but brilliant for me, the exact kind of error you pray a liar will make. And as I walked into the office the next day, the city humming around me, I felt the first true flicker of hope. For the first time in months, I believed justice wasn't a fantasy, it was a process. And processes can be controlled. Only the question remained, when and how would I strike? That question hung in the air like an invitation. The answer would come soon. But not before one more small, dangerous test. For a while, I held tightly to the small comforts of my plan. I had evidence, I had witnesses, I had redundancy. But what I didn't have was control over how other people would react once the pressure began to build. And people, especially people desperate to protect a lie, do things you never expect. That's when Gregory changed tactics. Up until then, his theft had been almost surgical: steal the credit, smile in public, keep up the persona. But once he felt the ground tremble beneath his feet, probably just the slightest hint of it, he shifted from predator to saboteur. Instead of polishing his trophy, he set about undermining me. It started with microaggressions that had the precise effect of isolating me. He'd rearrange seating so I was no longer next to people who'd helped with the project. He'd reassign collaboration duties to other teams. Small things on the surface, but they slowly cut away at my support network. Then he moved to the professional hits. He started reassigning me to tasks that were beneath my role. The busy work any ambitious junior could do. Data entry, cleaning up slides, mind-numbing formatting. When I pushed back quietly, because I always pushed carefully, he'd respond with a tone that made me sound petulant. "Adrian, it's important to be a team player," he'd say, loud enough for others to hear. He was doing this on purpose, building a record of me being difficult. So when the moment came, everyone would shrug. Well, he was always combative anyway. At the same time, he began a whisper campaign. It was subtle, an offhand joke in the hallway, a concern voiced to HR about workload and attitude. Nothing you could pin on him definitively, but when repeated in the right circles, these things coagulate into a corporate narrative, an employee with attitude issues. And the most poisonous part of it wasn't public, it was private. He took to writing short, pointed performance notes and copying them to HR. Little bullet points, missed deadlines, slow response times, needs to improve collaboration. On their own, they were banal. Together, they could form the first draft of a firing rationale. I saw one of them when I accidentally opened a thread meant for management only. He'd titled it "Concerns Adrian." The words were clinical, the tone neutral, but the intent was sharp: make a paper trail. That was the moment the hunt stopped feeling like a game and started feeling like a race. If I was going to expose him, I had to be faster than his campaign to discredit me. There were nights I'd lie in bed replaying the little humiliations. The way he'd interrupt me in meetings now felt more malicious than before. The way coworkers started offering polite distance, those were not just cowardice, they were survival instincts kicking in. People protect themselves first. It's the brutal logic of corporate ecosystems. The harder I pushed, the more I risked being painted as the noise they'd rather avoid. So I adapted. If he built a paper trail against me, I would build a paper trail that disproved his narrative. If he whispered rumors, I would gather loud facts. Or at least that was the theory. I began to log everything that could be perceived as performance issues, but from the opposite side. I recorded my own emails with timestamps, saved drafts showing when I had responded to clients, archived calendar invites proving I was present and on time. For every note he put in HR, I made sure I had a corresponding document showing that the missed deadline was a result of him changing scope an hour before delivery. For every suggestion he noodled about my attitude, I dug up praise emails from clients and colleagues praising my professionalism. And I strengthened my human evidence. Mia became more than a nod. She became an ally with specifics. She wrote a short note recounting an instance when Gregory presented her team's work as his own. The junior designer gave me the original PDFs with embedded author metadata. Another analyst, Tariq, quietly told me that Gregory had taken credit for a model Tariq had built months earlier. They weren't brave martyrs, most of them still feared Gregory, but they were willing to be factual if asked. Still, I felt watched. Gregory's eyes seemed to find me in the room like a predator's. Once in a meeting, he asked a question that seemed casual but was a test. "Adrian, can you summarize the last quarter's anomalies after the break?" The rest of the room waited. I summarized. I did it cleanly, but he smiled afterward and said to no one in particular, "Good. Let's make sure we don't rely too heavily on one person for this." The message was clear. Dependability is a liability when you're trying to be invisible. And then the worst possible thing happened. One Wednesday morning, I received a calendar invite from HR. The subject line was clinical performance review, the organizer, HR lead, attendees, HR lead, Gregory, Adrian Velasquez. My heart dropped. A performance review can be normal in the corporate grind, but when an employee gets an unscheduled review with the manager who's been actively writing concerns into HR, it's rarely a coincidence. My stomach knotted into a hard ball. For a second, the entire dossier I'd painstakingly assembled felt like a slender lifeline I might not have time to present. I didn't respond immediately. I sat very still at my desk and let the city noise outside drown out the rising panic. Manhattan always sounds loud at noon, the traffic, the voices, the sirens, like a constant reminder that life moves on whether you get justice or not. I called Mia under the excuse of needing to ask about a file. Her voice was quiet and steady when she picked up. After some small talk, I told her bluntly, "They called me in for a performance review. Gregory's on the invite. He's putting together a case." There was a long inhale on the other end. Then, without hesitation, "Don't go alone." It should have been obvious, but Mia's words landed with the force of reality. Don't go alone. I needed allies. I needed to control the narrative inside that room. I had documents, yes, but I also needed presence witnesses and a methodical calm that would not be easily discredited. We agreed on a plan. She and the designer would both be available after the meeting if I needed them for anything ready to corroborate facts if HR asked for follow-ups. Tariq would stand by his story about Gregory taking credit. Small, incrementally safe commitments that could form a barricade when the attack came. The day of the review arrived. I rehearsed my responses like a witness preparing testimony. Don't get emotional. Keep to facts. Show timestamps. Present chronology. Don't let him make it personal. I walked into the HR office with a manila folder under my arm. Inside, photocopies of the email with the newsletter screenshot, printed metadata logs, a timeline of ownership for the project, and redacted witness notes. My hands were steady. My mouth said nothing until the HR lead smiled with the bland, professional warmth of someone who had seen too many office dramas. Gregory presented calmly. He spoke in neutral tones, laid out concerns, and at one point he looked at me with a small, clinical smile and said, "We need to make sure people who are marked as high potential aren't taking on too much or causing bottlenecks." I opened my folder. I began to speak. I presented the timeline. I showed the newsletter screenshot. I walked them through revisions with dates. Every time Gregory tried to turn it into a personality problem, I brought it back to evidence. And then, right at the edge of the meeting, Gregory did something I didn't expect. He slid a printed performance note across the table and said, in a voice that was almost bored, "We've had a few concerns about your responsiveness. People have complained you're not always collaborative." It was an attempt to frame me as the problem, a neat inversion. He smiled in a way that suggested the meeting was already over. The HR lead made a note. I could see the wheels turning, process steps, formal documentation. They wouldn't fire me on the spot, but that note could be the seed of something later, a formal performance plan, a blemish on my file. I left the room with my folder. My palms itched to pull out my phone and call the CEO. But I didn't. I remembered Mia's voice. Don't go alone. The dossier had hit their desk, but now the war had become louder. Gregory had responded not by stopping, but by escalating. On the sidewalk, outside the building, the city felt indifferent. A woman juggling grocery bags brushed past me without a second look. A taxi honked. People lived their lives oblivious to the pitched quiet anguish of corporate combat. I rested my back against the glass of the office building and thumbed my phone. There was an email I hadn't expected. "Thanks for meeting today. HR will follow up next week regarding performance plan." The words read like a slow burn. I felt a brief flash of panic. What if HR used the note to build a case and remove me before I could expose him? I folded my dossier back into the manila folder and slid it into my bag like a talisman. And in that pocket of silence, I promised myself two things. I would not let fear make me small, and I would not act without absolute certainty. Gregory had drawn his first formal line in the sand. Now I had to draw mine. When I walked back toward the elevator, a notification popped up on my phone, a calendar invite from Gregory. Subject line, "Team all hands presentation update. Time, Friday, 10 a.m. My jaw tightened. Friday, The same day the comms blog might post. The same cadence as the newsletter timing, a public forum, a stage. He was moving the conversation out of HR and into the light, and he was doing it fast. I felt the familiar cold flip in my gut. The battle was accelerating. The dossier mattered, but timing would be everything. If I was going to pull this off and keep my job, I had to be faster, smarter, and more surgical than I had ever been before. And for the first time since this whole mess began, the idea of pulling the trigger felt terrifying and delicious at the same time. The days leading up to Friday were some of the longest of my life. Every tick of the clock at the office felt louder, every passing hour like a drumbeat pushing me toward a collision I couldn't avoid. I'd been gathering evidence for weeks, but evidence is useless without timing. You can't just dump a pile of facts in front of people and expect justice. You have to control the when, the how, and the who's watching. And Gregory knew that too. That's why he had scheduled the all-hands meeting. He wanted an audience. He wanted the stage. He wanted to cement the narrative before I could rewrite it. But I wasn't going to let him. Tuesday, I walked into the office that morning with my dossier strapped to me like armor. Every conversation, every passing look felt suspicious. I kept wondering if Gregory could sense it that something was coming. He was too calm. That calm scared me more than anything. In meetings, he smirked, joked with executives, made sly comments about innovation culture. It was like he was already rehearsing for his big performance on Friday. Meanwhile, I tightened my own preparations. I updated the timeline with timestamps so clear even a child could follow them. I gathered fresh metadata from our shared drive, capturing not just when I'd built the models, but the revision history showing my logins. I even printed out email headers boring to most people, but undeniable when proving authorship. The hardest part, though, wasn't collecting evidence. It was holding myself together. At night, lying in bed in my tiny Manhattan apartment, the doubts crept in. What if HR doesn't care? What if the executives cover for him? What if they see me as the problem instead of the victim? The voice of fear was relentless. And yet, so was the memory of my father. His smile, his fall from grace. His voice when he said, "Never let anyone erase your work, Adrian." I wasn't just fighting for me anymore, I was fighting for him. Wednesday morning, I bumped into Mia at the coffee station. She leaned in, whispered so quietly it was almost lost under the hiss of the machine. "Friday, don't flinch. If you've got the proof, let them choke on it." I didn't even reply. I just nodded, clutching my coffee like it was a lifeline. But inside, her words lit a fuse. Don't flinch. Later that day, something strange happened. Tariq, the analyst who'd quietly told me about Gregory stealing his work months earlier, sent me a Slack message. Just 4 words. "He's practicing his speech." I froze. Then he added, "He's rehearsing slides in the big conference room after hours. Looks like he's taking full credit for your project again." My chest tightened. He wasn't just planning to secure his reputation, he was going to make my erasure official in front of the entire company. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk at home, staring at my folders, rehearsing what I'd say if I had the chance, how to time the reveal, how to strike when the silence was loudest. I imagined Gregory's smug face twisting as the facts landed like punches. That fantasy kept me going. By Thursday morning, the tension in the office was palpable. Word had spread that Gregory's presentation would be a big one. People whispered about a possible promotion, a leadership role, maybe even a shot at executive track. Every time I heard someone say his name with admiration, rage burned hotter in my gut. That afternoon, Mia found me again. "You can't go in blind," she said. "If you're going to pull the trigger, you need insurance, something they can't ignore." That's when she handed me something that changed everything. It was a PDF, an internal project draft she had archived months earlier. It clearly listed my name in the author field, with Gregory only listed as reviewer. She smiled grimly. "Thought you might need this someday." Guess I was right. I almost hugged her right there in the office, but I kept my cool. I slid the file onto a flash drive and tucked it into my bag. This was no longer just my word against his. This was undeniable digital proof. Thursday night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, practicing my delivery like a soldier preparing for battle. My reflection stared back at me, tired eyes, clenched jaw, shoulders stiff with years of swallowed anger. I whispered the lines to myself. Actually, Gregory, that's not accurate. If I may, I'd like to present something to the room. Here's the timeline of development, with author metadata and timestamps. Each phrase was a weapon, each pause a chance to let the silence do its damage. And when I finally went to bed, one thought played over and over in my mind. Tomorrow, Gregory falls. Friday morning, the office was buzzing before 10 a.m. People filed into the big conference room, chatting, balancing coffee cups, shuffling papers. The projector hummed as Gregory set up his slides. I sat near the back, dossier in my bag, pulse thundering in my ears. My mouth was dry, but my resolve was sharp as glass. Gregory glanced at me once across the room, his smirk wide and confident. To him, today was a coronation. To me, it was an execution. And as the lights dimmed and Gregory cleared his throat to begin, I gripped the folder under the table and whispered to myself, "Don't flinch." The conference room was packed. Rows of chairs filled with engineers, analysts, designers, even the HR reps who rarely showed up unless something big was happening. The overhead lights dimmed, and all eyes turned to the man at the front of the room, Gregory. He stood tall, crisp suit, tie perfectly knotted, his smirk sharpened into a smile of false humility. He projected calm authority, like this was already his victory lap. "Good morning, everyone," he began, voice smooth, almost theatrical. "Today I want to walk you through the work that has brought us to the brink of a breakthrough work that demonstrates the kind of innovation this company prides itself on." The screen behind him lit up with the first slide. My stomach dropped. There it was, my work, the flow chart, the predictive models, the simulations, except the title slide read, "Lead Innovator, Gregory Hale." The audience leaned forward, intrigued. I watched faces light up as he walked them through the opening slides. Every sentence out of his mouth was a knife, because each phrase was stolen. He even mimicked phrases I'd used months ago in internal notes. I could feel my pulse hammering in my neck. The air around me was buzzing, but it wasn't excitement. It was rage building inside me, pressure begging for release. But I didn't move, not yet. Timing was everything. Gregory strutted across the stage like a man who owned the room. He cracked jokes, smiled at executives, and even dropped a line about mentorship and collaboration, as if he was some benevolent leader. I saw a few coworkers exchanging uneasy glances. Tariq frowned at the screen, and Mia sat stiffly in the second row, her arms crossed. She knew, they both knew, but most of the audience was eating it up. Applause followed the midpoint of his presentation, and I could feel the narrative hardening like wet cement. If I didn't act soon, it would set in stone forever. Then came the moment. Gregory pulled up the final slide, an impressive chart with projections for future revenue streams. My chart, my calculations. "And as you can see," he said, his voice swelling with pride, "this vision is not just theoretical, it's actionable. It's the kind of thinking that will guide this company into the future. I've been honored to lead this project, and I look forward to building on this foundation with all of you." The room erupted into applause. That was his mistake, because applause means silence follows. And silence was my weapon. I rose from my chair, calm, measured, my dossier clutched in one hand, the flash drive in the other. "Actually," I said, my voice slicing through the last fading claps, "there's something the room should know." The shift was immediate. Heads turned. The air tightened. Gregory froze for half a second before flashing a practiced grin. "Oh, Adrian," he said, tone dripping with false warmth. "Glad you could join us. Did you want to add something?" I stepped forward toward the center of the room and met his eyes. "Yes, I'd like to clarify the authorship of the work you just presented." Gasps. Chairs squeaked as people leaned in. Gregory's smile twitched. "Well, Adrian was part of the team, of course," he said quickly, trying to smooth it over. "Everyone played a role." I shook my head. "No, I wasn't part of the team. I was the team. Every model, every simulation, every projection was my work, and I can prove it." I handed the flash drive to the IT tech running the projector. My heart pounded as he switched the input, and suddenly my screen lit up behind me. "Here's the original draft," I said, clicking to the first file. The document metadata appeared created by Adrian Cole. Reviewer Gregory Hale. Date stamped. Irrefutable. Murmurs rippled through the room. I clicked again. Here's the revision history from the company's own system, showing my login building this project from scratch, line by line, timestamp by timestamp. Another click. The email headers, the Slack messages, the PDF Mia had given me. Each slide was a hammer blow. Each murmur grew louder. Gregory's face lost color. He stammered, This is out of context. It's Adrian. You're misunderstanding how collaboration works." I cut him off, steady and calm. "No, Gregory. Collaboration means contributing. What you did was erasure, and I won't let you erase me." The room went silent. Executives in the front row leaned forward, their expressions stony. Then Mia's voice rang out from the second row, sharp and clear. "He's telling the truth." Gregory's composure cracked. He sputtered, gesturing helplessly at the slides. "This is a witch hunt. He's trying to make me look bad." But the more he spoke, the worse it sounded. Desperate, defensive, guilty. Finally, one of the VPs raised a hand. "That's enough. Gregory, step aside. Adrian, finish your presentation." The words hit me like lightning. Finish my presentation. I walked to the podium. My hands trembled not with fear, but with power. For the first time, the room wasn't Gregory's, it was mine. I straightened my shoulders, looked out at the crowd, and began, "Good morning. My name is Adrian Cole, and this is my work." The applause that followed wasn't polite, it was thunderous. Behind me, Gregory sank into his chair, his face a mask of humiliation. His coronation had turned into an execution, and I wasn't done yet. The room was still buzzing when I clicked to the final slide of my presentation. My name, my signature, my work. The applause had been thunderous, but when it died down, the silence that followed was even louder. It was the silence of judgment, of realization, of people connecting the dots. Gregory sat in the corner, rigid, face pale, sweat beading along his temple. For years, he had thrived in control, manipulating narratives, twisting facts. But here, stripped of lies, stripped of polish, he looked small. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of him. The VP of operations, a sharp woman named Evelyn, leaned forward. Her voice was low, deliberate, and cutting. "Gregory," she said, "do you have anything to say for yourself?" Gregory's mouth opened, then closed. He tried to speak, but what came out was broken, defensive sputtering. This is a misunderstanding. This was a team effort. I simply guided Adrian's guided." Evelyn cut him off. "Is that what you call erasing an employee's authorship? Passing off months of their work as your own?" The room tensed. Even HR shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Gregory glanced around the audience for an ally, but no one met his eyes. His kingdom had crumbled in seconds. He started again, but Evelyn raised her hand. Enough. Her voice was final. Like a gavel slamming, she turned to me. "Adrian, thank you for your courage in bringing this forward. We'll need your documentation for an internal investigation. Effective immediately. Gregory Hale is suspended pending review." Suspended. The word rippled through the room. Gasps. Whispers. The once untouchable man had just been publicly stripped of power. Gregory's chair screeched as he stood, face twisted with rage and humiliation. "This is a witch hunt," he shouted, voice cracking. "I built this company's reputation. You'll regret this." Security entered quietly through the side door. Not dramatic, not violent, just inevitable. Gregory's words turned to snarls as they guided him out, but no one looked at him. No one offered sympathy. He was already a ghost in that room. When the door closed, Evelyn exhaled sharply. She nodded at me. "Adrian, continue." So I did. For the next 20 minutes, I walked the company through my vision, my calculations, my roadmap for the future. But it wasn't just a presentation, it was a reclaiming, a rewriting of the narrative Gregory had stolen years ago. I felt the shift in the room. Every nod, every note scribbled, every glance exchanged. It wasn't just approval, it was respect. And for me, it wasn't just about career advancement. It was personal. Every slide I presented was a silent message to my father. This is for you. They will know the truth. When I finished, the room erupted again, not with applause for an employee, but with recognition for a leader. The investigation was swift. With the evidence I'd provided and with the testimony of colleagues, the truth came out in brutal clarity. Gregory had a pattern. He'd been stealing ideas, burying credit, and rewriting history for years. The fraud he'd pinned on my father, the audit trail proved Gregory had orchestrated it. He destroyed a man's livelihood to save his own skin. Gregory was terminated with cause, his reputation shredded, his career in ashes. The industry whispered about him, but not with admiration, only disgust. And my father's name? Cleared. Officially. Publicly. I'll never forget the moment I showed my father the company's formal statement. He held the letter in trembling hands, eyes scanning every word. His lips pressed tight, like he was holding back decades of pain and pride all at once. Then he looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw relief in his eyes. They know the truth, I said quietly. They finally know. His voice cracked when he whispered back, "You gave me my name back." And in that moment, I realized my revenge wasn't just about punishing Gregory. It was about restoring what he had stolen. Weeks later, I stood in the same office lobby where Gregory had once towered over everyone. Only this time, people weren't whispering about him. They were whispering about me. I had become the face of the project, the voice trusted to lead. But more than that, I had become the man my father had always believed I could be. Gregory lost everything. But I gained something priceless. Not just justice, but vindication. When someone tries to erase you, they think they're rewriting history. But the truth has a way of surviving, buried in files, in memories, in people who refuse to forget.
Thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this, go watch the one of the left and don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel for more tales of triumph over injustice and a saga of ultimate revenge.